Part 1. The meeting room was huge, carved from a single asteroid and polished until it gleamed. Representatives from 47 different alien species sat in elevated seats that formed a circle around the center floor. The room hummed with quiet conversations in dozens of languages, all translated by small devices everyone wore. Commander Laura Bennett walked across the floor toward the speaking platform. Her boots made small echoing sounds with each step. She wore a simple military uniform from Earth, dark blue with a few medals on her chest. Her brown hair was pulled back neatly. Compared to the elaborate robes and armor of the aliens around her, she looked plain and unremarkable. Laura had been chosen to represent humanity at this meeting of the Galactic Security Council. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 15 years. Humans were still the newcomers, the primitives who barely understood the technology that other species had perfected thousands of years ago. Most aliens looked at humans the way adults might look at children playing with toys. She reached the center platform and stopped. Above her, the alien representatives looked down from their seats. Some had multiple eyes. Others glowed with internal light. A few were so different from anything human that Laura had needed special training just to understand their body language. The Chthonian ambassador spoke first. His name was Vec Theron, and he looked like a giant insect covered in thick armor plating. He had 4 eyes that all focused on Laura at once. When he spoke, a small device translated his clicking sounds into words everyone could understand. "So the humans send us 1 soldier," Vec Theron said. His tone made it clear he was not impressed. "We ask for a military assessment and Earth sends this?" Laura kept her face neutral. She had expected this kind of reception. "Commander Laura Bennett, Earth Defense Force 3rd Marine Division," she said clearly. "I'm here to provide the assessment you requested about humanity's ability to help defend against the Ravager attacks." Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The Ravagers were a serious threat. For 6 months, these mysterious aliens had been pushing into Council space, destroying colonies and wiping out defense fleets. 3 whole worlds had been lost. Billions had died, and here stood a human, from a species that had only just learned to travel faster than light, claiming she could help. Another alien spoke. This one was called a Selenar, a being made of pure energy contained inside a crystal shell. Her voice sounded like music, but there was an edge to it. "Commander Bennett, we have reviewed your technology. Your ships are centuries behind ours. Your weapons use simple kinetics. Your shields can barely stop asteroids. What could Earth possibly offer that we cannot do ourselves?" Laura looked directly at the Selenar without blinking. "Experience," she said simply. The word hung in the air. Several aliens looked at each other in confusion. Vec Theron's mandibles clicked in what his species considered amusement. "Experience? Your species has been in space for barely 15 years. The Selenar have traveled the stars for 8,000 years. The Chthonians for 12,000. What experience could you possibly have that we lack?" Laura reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "The Council requested a demonstration of human combat capabilities. I brought footage as you asked." A slug-like alien called a Valorian spoke through chemical signals that were translated into words. "We don't need to see training exercises, Commander. We need to understand real combat effectiveness." "This isn't training footage," Laura replied. She walked to a control panel and inserted the chip. "What you're about to see is actual combat from human history. I should warn you that some of it may be disturbing." A few aliens shifted in their seats. The Galactic Council had enjoyed 10,000 years of peace. They had small disputes over trade routes and resources, sure. Sometimes they used economic sanctions against each other. But real war, the kind where millions died, that was ancient history for most species in this room. Laura pressed a button and the lights dimmed. A holographic display activated above the center of the floor, large enough for everyone to see clearly. The first image appeared. It showed a landscape of mud and death. Everything was black and white, the footage old and grainy. Barbed wire stretched across torn earth. Craters filled with water dotted the ground. In the distance, explosions threw dirt and debris into the air. "The Battle of the Somme," Laura said, her voice steady and calm. "Earth year 1916. This was a single battle in what we call World War I. It lasted 4.5 months. Over 1 million soldiers were killed or wounded. The footage showed men climbing out of trenches dug into the ground. They ran across open mud toward enemy lines. Machine guns fired continuously. Explosions erupted among the running men. Bodies fell. The mud turned red with blood. Men screamed, but there was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run except forward or back to the trenches. The technology you see here was considered primitive even by our standards at that time, Laura continued. Yet humans fought this way for 4 years. The war spread across our entire planet. 16 million people died. 20 million more were wounded. The aliens sat in complete silence. The only sounds were the explosions and gunfire from the footage. The image changed. Now the footage was in color. Massive ships floated on water, firing enormous guns at each other. Aircraft dove from the sky, dropping bombs on cities below. Buildings collapsed. Fires raged out of control. Soldiers fought through ruined streets, shooting at enemies they could barely see through the smoke and dust. World War II, Laura said, 1939 to 1945. 70 million dead. We fought in deserts where the heat could kill you, in jungles where disease was as dangerous as the enemy, in frozen lands where you could freeze to death in minutes. We fought across every ocean on our planet. We fought until entire cities were nothing but ash and rubble. More images appeared. A blinding flash of light, then a mushroom cloud rising into the sky. A city vanished in an instant, replaced by fire and destruction. We developed atomic weapons, Laura said quietly, and we used them. On our own planet. Against our own species. Vectheron's mandibles had stopped clicking. His 4 eyes were fixed on the display. Around the room, other aliens sat frozen, watching the horror unfold. The footage continued. Soldiers slogging through thick jungle, fighting an enemy they couldn't see. Tank battles in vast deserts. Hundreds of armored vehicles exchanging fire. Helicopters flying low over urban areas while gunfire sparked from windows below. Fighter jets screaming through the sky. Submarines hunting each other in the dark depths of the ocean. Korea, Laura narrated. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. These are just some of the major conflicts. There were hundreds of smaller wars happening at the same time. Different nations, different causes, different weapons. But always, humans fought. The display showed soldiers moving through a destroyed city. Every building was damaged or collapsed. Rubble filled the streets. The soldiers moved carefully, checking every corner, every doorway. Suddenly, gunfire erupted. The soldiers took cover and returned fire. The battle was close, brutal, personal. Urban warfare, Laura said. Fighting in cities, building by building, room by room. We developed specific tactics for this. We trained for it. We got good at it. More footage. Night vision images showed soldiers moving through buildings in complete darkness. They used hand signals to communicate, moving as a coordinated unit. They stacked up at doorways, then burst through with practiced precision. Clear the room. Move to the next. Again and again. We learned to fight in every environment, Laura continued. Mountains, deserts, jungles, Arctic tundra, open ocean, underground tunnels, inside ships, in cities, in the countryside. During the day, at night, in every season, every weather condition, every terrain you can imagine. The footage shifted to show aerial combat. Missiles streaking through the sky, aircraft dodging and weaving. Some were hit and fell in flames. Others pressed their attacks, firing again and again until their targets were destroyed. We fought with every weapon we could create, Laura said. Swords and spears in ancient times. Rifles and cannons, tanks and aircraft, missiles and drones. Nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons. We developed weapons specifically designed to kill other humans as efficiently as possible. The images kept coming. Artillery bombardments that turned forests into wastelands. Naval battles where massive ships fired hundreds of missiles at each other. Special forces operations where small teams infiltrated enemy territory. Sieges that lasted months. Battles that lasted days without pause. We documented everything, Laura said. Every battle. Every tactic. Every success and every failure. We studied it. We learned from it. We built military academies to teach future soldiers what worked and what didn't. We created doctrine and strategy based on thousands of years of experience. The footage showed more recent conflicts. Better equipment, more sophisticated tactics, but the same brutal reality. Humans fighting humans with devastating effectiveness. Ambushes, counter-ambushes, raids, defense, offense, guerrilla warfare, conventional warfare, everything. We fought enemies with better technology than us, Laura said. We fought enemies with more soldiers than us. We fought enemies who were willing to die for their cause. We fought enemies who hid among civilians. We fought enemies who used our own. Part 2, the silence in the chamber stretched on for several long moments. Laura could see the aliens processing what they had just witnessed. Their body language, as different as each species was, all conveyed the same thing: shock, discomfort, and perhaps the beginning of understanding. Ambassador Vec Theron shifted in his seat. His chitinous armor plates scraped against each other as he moved. He seemed to be regaining his composure, pulling himself together after the disturbing footage. His mandibles began clicking again, faster this time. "That was certainly educational, Commander Bennett," he said. His translator added an undertone that might have been condescension. "But as I mentioned, that is your history. Let me show you what modern warfare actually looks like." He gestured with one of his upper appendages. A new holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, replacing the empty space where Laura's footage had been. The image showed space combat. Massive alien vessels engaged each other against the backdrop of stars. "This is footage from the Ravager attacks," Vec Theron announced to the entire council. "This is what we face now. This is what threatens our entire civilization." The display showed Ravager ships. They were enormous dark vessels covered in what looked like organic armor. Their weapons glowed with an eerie purple light, before firing beams that tore through space. The footage showed them attacking a council colony world. The planet's shields flickered under the assault. Massive energy barriers designed to protect the surface from asteroids and radiation shimmered like soap bubbles. Then they shattered. The Ravager weapons punched through them as if they weren't there. Beams of purple energy struck the surface. Cities exploded. Forests burned. Oceans boiled. "The Ravagers show no mercy," Vec Theron continued. "They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They come only to destroy and kill. 3 of our colony worlds have fallen to them. Billions of lives lost." The footage shifted to show Council defense fleets trying to engage the Ravagers. The Council ships were sleek and elegant, built for efficiency and long-range patrols. They formed loose formations and advanced on the Ravager vessels, their energy weapons firing streams of bright light. But their coordination was poor. Ships broke formation easily, each one seeming to act independently. When the Ravagers concentrated their fire on a single Council vessel, the others continued firing but didn't adjust their tactics. They didn't cover the damaged ship or focus their own fire to help it. The targeted vessel's shields failed and it exploded in a ball of flame. Laura watched carefully. She noted how the Council ships moved, how they fought, or rather how they tried to fight. They had powerful technology but no real combat doctrine. They were fighting as individuals, not as a coordinated military force. The display showed more battles. Ravager forces always won. Sometimes the Council inflicted damage, destroying a few Ravager vessels. But they always lost more than they destroyed. They always fell back. They always retreated. "These battles happened in the last 6 months," the Selenar representative said. Her crystalline form pulsed with colors that indicated distress. "Our forces are well trained. Our technology is among the best in the galaxy. But the Ravagers fight with a savagery we are not prepared for. They are relentless, brutal. They push forward no matter how many we destroy." The footage changed to show ground combat. Ravager soldiers landing on a colony world. The aliens were huge, nearly 3 meters tall. They wore thick armor that seemed part biological and part technological. Their weapons were massive, firing bolts of energy that could vaporize a being with a single hit. Council security forces tried to stop them. The security personnel wore light armor and carried energy rifles. They formed defensive lines and opened fire as the Ravagers advanced. Their weapons hit the Ravager armor but barely left marks. The Ravagers walked through the defensive fire like it was nothing. Then the Ravagers returned fire. Their weapons roared with power. Council security forces fell by the dozens. The defensive line broke almost immediately. The security forces scattered, running in all directions. Some tried to regroup. Others just ran. The Ravagers pushed forward, methodically hunting down anyone who resisted. "Our security forces are highly trained," Vec Theron said. "They maintain order on hundreds of worlds. They are disciplined and professional, but they cannot stand against the Ravagers in direct combat. The Ravagers seem to have no fear. They advance even when taking casualties. They fight with an intensity our forces have never encountered." The display showed civilians fleeing burning cities, millions of people trying to evacuate. The roads were jammed with vehicles. Spaceports were overwhelmed with people trying to escape. Many didn't make it. The Ravagers showed no distinction between military and civilian targets. They killed everyone, more footage played. Ravager ambushes on supply convoys. Council ships carrying food, medicine, and ammunition were attacked and destroyed. Ravager orbital bombardments cracked planetary crusts, causing volcanic eruptions and earthquakes. Ravager boarding parties tore through Council vessels, killing crews and taking over ships. In every scene, Council forces fell back. Sometimes in good order, sometimes in panic, but always backward, never forward. Never pushing the Ravagers back, only retreating, trying to minimize losses, hoping reinforcements would arrive. The display showed one final scene, a devastated colony world from orbit. The planet that had once been home to billions was now a scorched ruin. The atmosphere was thick with ash. The oceans had receded. The cities were gone. Nothing moved on the surface. Everything was dead. Vectheron paused the footage on that image. This is the colony world of New Thessia. Population 4 billion. It fell 3 weeks ago. We evacuated less than 10% of the population before the Ravagers overwhelmed our defenses. His voice carried weight. This is what we face, Commander Bennett. This is the enemy that threatens the entire Galactic Council. Now tell me, what can your primitive ships and kinetic weapons possibly do against this? Laura had been watching the entire display in silence. She had studied the Ravager tactics, the way they concentrated their forces, the way they used terror as a weapon, the way they pushed forward relentlessly. She had seen it all before in human history. Different weapons, different species, but the same fundamental approach. She was quiet for a moment after Vectheron's question. Then, without really meaning to, she yawned. It was a genuine yawn, natural and unforced. She covered her mouth with her hand out of habit. Her eyes watered slightly from the yawn. She blinked a few times. The reaction in the chamber was immediate and explosive. Aliens made sounds of shock and anger in dozens of different languages. The Valorian delegate emerged from its protective shell, its chemical signals practically screaming through the translator. "How dare you show such disrespect?" the Valorian shouted. "Billions have died. Entire worlds have been destroyed. And you yawn? You find this boring?" Other aliens joined in. Voices overlapped, some angry, some offended. The chamber filled with noise. Vectheron's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. The Selenor's crystalline form flashed with colors that clearly indicated anger. Laura waited for the noise to die down. She didn't look apologetic or embarrassed. She just stood there calmly waiting for them to finish. Eventually, the chamber grew quiet again. Everyone was staring at her, waiting for an explanation. "My apologies," Laura said, though her tone suggested she wasn't particularly sorry. "It's just that I've seen all of this before." "You've seen what before?" Vectheron demanded, his 4 eyes all focused on her intently. The tactics, the brutality, the overwhelming force, the terror weapons, the civilian casualties. Laura gestured at the frozen image of the destroyed planet. "Ambassador, that footage you just showed me? I've lived through worse." The Selenor representative's colors shifted rapidly. "That's impossible. You cannot have experienced anything comparable to this. We've shown you the systematic destruction of entire civilizations." Laura shook her head. "That colony world attack?" She pointed at the display. "Fallujah 2004 Earth urban combat. My species fought building to building for months. Thousands died. The city was destroyed. The boarding action you showed? Mogadishu, 1993. Soldiers trapped in a hostile city fighting their way out against overwhelming odds. The orbital bombardment? Dresden, 1945. We didn't have orbital weapons then, so we used aircraft. Dropped so many bombs that the city burned for days. Temperatures hot enough to melt stone. Tens of thousands dead in a single night." She walked slowly around the central platform, her boots echoing in the silent chamber. "The terror tactics? We invented terror tactics, Ambassador. We perfected them over thousands of years. Psychological warfare, shock and awe, totalva. We've done it all. And more importantly, we learned how to fight against it. We learned how to resist it. We learned how to survive it." Laura stopped walking and looked up at Vectheron. "You showed me those videos to intimidate me, to make me understand the scale of what you're facing, to show me how serious this threat is. But Ambassador, all I saw was Tuesday." The chamber fell completely silent again, but this time the silence felt different. It wasn't shock at human brutality. It was something else, a dawning realization. A slow understanding of what Laura was really saying. That first video you showed. Part 3A new holographic image appeared in the chamber. This time it wasn't footage from Earth or from Ravager attacks. It was a live transmission from Earth itself. The image showed a man in a military uniform standing in what appeared to be a command center. Behind him, dozens of people worked at computer stations. Large screens displayed star maps and tactical information. The man was Admiral Jake Morrison, commander of Earth's Defense Force. He was in his 50s, with gray hair cut short and a weathered face that showed years of experience. His uniform was covered in medals and ribbons, even more than Laura wore. He looked directly at the camera, which meant he was looking at everyone in the council chamber. Esteemed members of the Galactic Security Council, Morrison began. His voice was calm and professional, carrying the authority of someone used to command. Commander Bennett has shown you a glimpse of human military history. Now I'm here to tell you what Earth proposes to do about your Ravager problem. New displays activated around the chamber, showing tactical diagrams and ship formations. Morrison manipulated them with hand gestures, highlighting specific points as he spoke. The Ravagers are winning because they're fighting a war while you're trying to manage a conflict, Morrison said bluntly. They understand aggression. They understand overwhelming force. They understand sustained pressure. Your forces are responding reactively, defensively. You're trying to minimize casualties and protect assets. Those are good goals in peacetime. In war, they'll get you killed. A council delegate from a species Laura didn't recognize spoke up. Are you suggesting we abandon our principles? That we become as savage as the Ravagers? No, Morrison replied firmly. I'm suggesting you remember that sometimes the only way to protect innocent people is to be very good at controlled violence. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. We learned it over thousands of years and millions of deaths. We're offering to teach you what we know so you don't have to learn it the same way. He brought up a new diagram showing council fleet formations. The ships were spread out in a loose pattern that maximized coverage of space. Your ship formations are designed for peacetime operations. Efficient fuel use. Maximum coverage area. Good for patrols and showing presence. Terrible for actual combat. Morrison highlighted how the Ravagers attacked these formations. The Ravagers concentrate their force at a single point. They punch through your spread-out ships because you don't have mutual support. Each ship fights alone. That's fine against pirates or smugglers. Against a real military force, it's suicide. He showed a different formation pattern. Human ships clustered together in a tight group, overlapping their defensive fields. This is how humans fight. Close formations, overlapping shields, concentrated firepower. Every ship supports every other ship. When one is attacked, the others can help defend it. When we attack, we all hit the same target at the same time. It's basic military doctrine that we developed centuries ago. The tactical display showed a simulation. Council ships in the tight human formation versus Ravager ships. The simulation ran. The Council ships, fighting together with concentrated fire, destroyed the Ravager vessels while taking minimal damage themselves. We're proposing a joint command structure, Morrison continued. Human officers will serve as tactical advisors to your fleet commanders. We'll teach your crews how to fight as units, how to coordinate fire, how to maintain formation under pressure. Your technology is better than ours. We'll teach you how to use it effectively. Ambassador Vectheron leaned forward in his seat. And on the ground? Your proposal mentions ground combat training as well. Morrison nodded. Ground combat is where humans really excel. Your security forces are essentially police units. They're trained to maintain order, enforce laws, handle civil disputes. That's important work, but they're not soldiers. They're not trained for war. The Ravagers are shock troops, warriors. They need to be met with actual military force. Laura stepped forward again, adding to Morrison's explanation. We're proposing to embed human combat instructors with your ground forces. Teach them proper squad tactics, urban warfare techniques, how to set up defensive positions that can actually hold, how to conduct offensive operations, how to move as a unit, how to cover each other, how to fight effectively. She pulled up images of human military training, soldiers practicing room-clearing techniques, squads moving through simulated urban environments, units conducting coordinated assaults on fortified positions. But more than just techniques, we teach the mindset, how to keep fighting when you're scared, how to maintain unit cohesion when things go wrong, how to make decisions under pressure, how to trust your squad mates with your life. The Selenar representative's colors flickered with concern. This all sounds like it would take years to implement. We don't have years. The Ravagers are attacking now. Morrison smiled grimly. That's why we're also proposing immediate deployment of human combat units to active war zones. Not to take over your defense, not to replace your forces, but to show them what effective combat looks like in real time. Let your soldiers see how human Marines clear a building, how human pilots coordinate in aerial combat, how human commanders make tactical decisions under fire. Learning by doing is faster than any classroom training. He brought up another display, this one showing supply lines and logistics. You'll also need to reorganize your entire logistics system. Your supply lines are vulnerable because you're still operating on a peacetime model. In war, everything becomes a weapon. Food, medicine, ammunition, fuel. These things win long campaigns. You can have the best soldiers and the best ships, but if they run out of supplies, they lose. Laura added, "We'll help you establish secure supply routes, fortified staging areas, proper combat logistics with redundancy and backup plans. We'll teach you how to protect your convoys, how to stockpile supplies in forward positions, how to keep your forces supplied even when the enemy is trying to cut your supply lines." Morrison continued, "We'll also need to work on intelligence gathering and analysis. You have good sensors and surveillance systems, but you're not using them effectively for military purposes. You're not predicting enemy movements, not identifying patterns in their attacks, not using intelligence to gain advantages. We can help with that." The display showed reconnaissance satellites, surveillance drones, and intelligence analysis centers. Human military intelligence has been refined over centuries. We know how to collect information, how to analyze it, how to turn it into actionable intelligence that gives our forces an advantage. We'll share those techniques. A delegate from a newer council species spoke up. His name was Kyle Patterson, representing a species that had only joined the council 200 years ago. They still maintained some military traditions, unlike most council members. "Everything you're proposing makes sense. My people have been arguing for months that we need to change our approach. If humans are willing to help, I say we should accept." Other delegates began talking among themselves. The conversation spread through the chamber in multiple languages. Some seemed convinced. Others appeared skeptical. A few still looked uncomfortable with the whole idea. Vectheron raised one of his appendages for silence. The chamber gradually quieted down. "What you're proposing is massive, Admiral Morrison. You're essentially asking the entire council to admit that our approach has failed, that we need to completely restructure how we think about defense and conflict." "Yes," Morrison said simply. "That's exactly what I'm asking. Because your approach has failed. You've lost 3 colony worlds, billions of lives, 2 major fleets crippled or destroyed. How many more losses do you need before you admit you need help?" The blunt words hit hard. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. They knew he was right, even if they didn't want to admit it. The Selenar representative spoke quietly. "If we agree to this proposal, how quickly can you deploy these advisors and instructors?" "As I said, we don't have much time." Morrison gestured to Laura. "Commander Bennett is already here. She can begin working with your forces immediately. I have 3 transport ships en route carrying the first wave of advisors. 2,000 combat instructors, tactical specialists, logistics experts, and intelligence analysts. They'll arrive within 1 week." He paused to let that sink in before continuing. "We can have 50,000 more personnel deployed within 1 month if needed. That includes frontline combat units that can engage the Ravagers directly, while training your forces at the same time." The Valorian delegate emerged fully from its shell in surprise. 50,000? How many military personnel does Earth actually have? Morrison shrugged slightly. Active duty across all branches? About 3 million. That includes Navy, Army, Air Force, Space Force, and Marines. Reserves that we could call up if needed? Another 10 million with combat experience. Veterans who've retired but could be recalled in an emergency? Maybe 5 million more who are still young enough and healthy enough to fight. He let those numbers sit for a moment, and that's just Earth itself. Our colonies add another 2 million active personnel. Total. If we mobilized everything, we could field about 20 million trained soldiers. We won't need to do that, but we can if necessary. The numbers shocked the chamber into silence. Earth had more active military. Part 4. 6 weeks had passed since that meeting in the council chamber. 6 weeks since the Galactic Council had reluctantly accepted Earth's proposal. 6 weeks of intense training, reorganization, and preparation. And now, Commander Laura Bennett stood on the bridge of a Council warship called the Stellar Pride, watching the tactical display with calm, experienced eyes. The bridge was spacious and clean, designed by the Chrythonians who built most Council military vessels. Smooth walls curved overhead. Control stations were arranged in a circle around a central command platform. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing data that could be manipulated with hand gestures. Everything was efficient and well-designed. It just hadn't been designed for actual combat. Captain Zekmorn stood beside Laura. He was Chrythonian like Ambassador Vec Theron, covered in the same kind of chitinous armor plating. But where Vec Theron was a politician, Zekmorn was a soldier. He had served in the Council Defense Force for 30 years. He had commanded patrol vessels, escorted merchant ships, and maintained peace in disputed territories. But he had never commanded a ship in a real battle until the Ravagers came. Those first encounters had been disasters. His fleet had fallen back in confusion, taking heavy losses. That was why Laura was here. For 6 weeks she had worked with Zekmorn and his crew, teaching them, training them, drilling them over and over until new tactics became automatic. The crew had resisted at first. They didn't trust the primitive human telling them how to use their own advanced technology. But Laura had been patient. She showed them why the tactics worked. She ran simulations. She explained the reasoning behind every decision. Slowly, grudgingly, they had started to listen. "Commander," the sensor officer called out. He was also Chrythonian, younger than the captain with slightly greener coloring to his armor. "Ravager fleet detected. 3 capital ships, 12 escort vessels. They're on an intercept course. They'll reach us in approximately 10 minutes. In the old days, 6 weeks ago, this would have triggered panic. The captain would have immediately ordered a retreat. Council doctrine emphasized preservation of assets over combat. Better to fall back and wait for reinforcements than risk your ship and crew. That doctrine had cost them 3 colony worlds." Laura looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was large but not overwhelming. 3 capital ships meant serious firepower, but the Council battle group had enough vessels to match them if they fought smart, if they used the tactics Laura had taught them, if they trusted their training. "Captain," Laura said calmly, "I recommend we execute Formation Delta 7. Captain Zekmorn's mandibles clicked softly. It was a sound Laura had learned to recognize as determination mixed with nervousness. He was still getting used to the new tactics, still fighting his instincts that told him to spread out and run. But he had seen the simulations. He had studied the human combat doctrine. And deep down, he knew the old way wasn't working. "All ships," Zekmorn commanded, his voice carrying across the bridge and transmitted to the other vessels in the battle group. "Formation Delta 7. Prepare for coordinated strike pattern. All weapons to stand by." The battle group consisted of 9 ships total. The Stellar Pride, 2 other cruisers, and 6 destroyers. In the old formation, they would have spread out across thousands of kilometers. Each ship would have operated independently, trying to cover as much space as possible. When the Ravagers attacked, each ship would have fought alone, unsupported, easy to isolate and destroy. Formation Delta 7 was different. The 9 ships moved close together, clustering in a tight defensive sphere. Their shields overlapped, creating layers of protection. Their weapon systems were coordinated so they could all fire on the same target simultaneously. It looked defensive, almost vulnerable. That was exactly the point. "This still feels wrong," the weapons officer admitted from his station. He was from a different species, with 6 arms that he used to manipulate multiple controls at once. "We're bunched together. If they hit us with a massive strike, we could all take damage." "Trust the math," Laura replied. She had heard this objection before during training. "And trust your shields. Overlapping defense is stronger than individual defense. They can't hit all of us at once. And when they focus on one target, the others will have clear shots." The Ravager fleet was closing fast. Laura watched their approach on the tactical display. The enemy ships moved aggressively, accelerating hard. They were clearly confident. They had destroyed dozens of Council vessels using the same tactics. Overwhelming speed, concentrated firepower, break through the defensive lines and destroy ships one by one. 5 minutes until weapon range, the sensor officer announced. His voice was steady, but Laura could hear the tension. This crew had lost friends in previous battles. They remembered watching ships explode, watching defense fleets scatter, Watching colonies fall, fear was natural. Learning to fight through fear was what training was for. Steady, Laura said quietly. Hold formation. Don't fire until optimal range. Let them come to us. The minutes ticked down. 4 minutes, 3, 2. The Ravager ships grew larger on the visual display. Their weapons began to glow with that eerie purple light that preceded firing. The bridge crew tensed. Hands hovered over controls. Eyes watched displays. Everyone waited for the order. 1 minute, the sensor officer reported. Laura watched the range indicator. The Ravagers were moving exactly as she expected. Straight ahead. No clever maneuvers. No tactical thinking. Just brute force and intimidation. That worked against enemies who were afraid. Against enemies who had forgotten how to fight. It wouldn't work today. 30 seconds, the Ravager capital ships were massive up close. Each one was twice the size of the Stellar Pride. Their organic armor seemed to pulse with dark energy. Their weapon ports glowed brighter. They were preparing to fire. Preparing to tear through the council formation like they had so many times before. 15 seconds. Laura's voice cut through the tension. Weapons free. All ships target the lead capital ship. Fire on my mark. The weapons officer's 6 arms moved across his controls, programming targeting data. Around the battle group, the other 8 ships did the same. Every weapon system locked onto the same target. The lead Ravager capital ship. Concentrated firepower. Basic human military doctrine. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The Ravagers opened fire first. Purple beams lanced out from their weapons. The shots hit the council formation's overlapping shields. The energy splashed across the defensive barriers like water hitting a wall. The shields flickered but held. Multiple layers of protection absorbed the damage that would have overwhelmed a single ship. 5, 4, 3. Mark, Laura said calmly. Fire, Captain Zekmorn commanded. The Stellar Pride and its entire battle group opened fire simultaneously. Energy weapons, plasma cannons, missile launchers, every offensive system activated at once. 9 ships worth of firepower, all aimed at a single point, all hitting the same target within a fraction of a second. The lead Ravager capital ship's shields lit up like a sun. They were powerful shields designed to withstand enormous punishment. But they were designed to handle fire from 1 ship, maybe 2. Not 9 ships firing together. The concentrated barrage overwhelmed the shields in seconds. They collapsed, failed, disappeared. The follow-up shots hit the capital ship's armor directly. The organic hull that had seemed so tough cracked and split. Explosions rippled along the Ravager vessel's length. Secondary detonations as internal systems failed. The massive ship shuddered, broke apart, exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up space for thousands of kilometers. The bridge crew of the Stellar Pride erupted in cheers. They had just destroyed a Ravager capital ship, something that usually took multiple battle groups and heavy casualties. They had done it in seconds with minimal damage to their own forces. Maintain discipline, Laura called out sharply. The fight isn't over. Formation shift to pattern beta. Target the second capital ship. The celebration cut off immediately. The crew returned to their stations, but Laura could see the change in their body language. They were standing straighter, moving with more confidence. They had proven the tactics worked. Now they believed. The battle group executed pattern beta. The ship separated slightly, shifting from a defensive sphere to an offensive wedge. The destroyers peeled off in pairs, moving to flank the remaining Ravager escorts. The cruisers stayed together, maintaining overlapping shields while focusing their heavy weapons on the second capital ship. The Ravager fleet finally seemed to realize they weren't fighting the same kind of enemy they had faced before. Their formation broke as they tried to adjust. The escorts split off to engage the destroyers. The 2 remaining capital ships concentrated their fire on the cruisers, but the coordination was gone. The Ravagers were used to enemies that scattered when pressed. These council ships weren't scattering. They were fighting back with disciplined precision. The destroyers worked in pairs, covering each other as they engaged the escorts. The cruisers maintained their formation, their combined shields absorbing damage while their weapons hammered the second capital ship. Target's shields at 60%, the weapons officer reported. Continuing fire. Destroyer 4 reports successful engagement, communications announced. Ravager escort destroyed. Part 5 now. It was 2 capital ships destroyed and only 1 remaining. The tide of battle had completely turned. The Ravager escorts were falling back, trying to regroup. The destroyers pursued them, working in coordinated pairs just as Laura had taught them. The remaining Ravager capital ship seemed to hesitate, as if the commander couldn't believe what was happening. "The remaining capital ship is changing course," the sensor officer reported. "They're turning away." Captain Zekmorn's mandibles clicked in what Laura now recognized as satisfaction. "They're retreating. Pursuit course," Laura ordered. "Don't let them regroup. Press the advantage." "All ships pursue," Zekmorn commanded. "Maintain formation. Don't break discipline." The Council battle group advanced. The Ravagers were running now, their aggressive assault completely broken. Their escorts tried to cover the capital ship's retreat, but the destroyers kept pressure on them. One escort exploded, then another. The Ravagers were taking casualties without inflicting any in return. The battle became a running fight. The Council ships chased the retreating Ravagers across space, firing continuously. Long-range weapons reached out and hit the enemy vessels. The Ravager shields flickered under sustained fire. Their return fire was sporadic and poorly aimed. They were panicking. "Capital ship is preparing to jump," sensors announced. "They're charging their hyperspace drive." "Hit them before they can escape," Laura said. "All ships maximum firepower. Target their engines." The cruisers fired everything they had: energy beams, plasma bolts, missiles. The barrage struck the Ravager capital ship's rear section where the engines glowed with building power. Explosions rippled across the hull. The hyperspace jump failed. The ship tumbled out of control. "Finish them," Zekmorn ordered. The final barrage destroyed the last Ravager capital ship. It broke apart in multiple explosions, debris scattering across space. The remaining Ravager escorts, seeing their capital ships destroyed and their formation shattered, broke and ran. They jumped to hyperspace in random directions, fleeing for their lives. The bridge of the Stellar Pride fell silent. The battle was over. They had won. Not just survived, not just minimized casualties, won decisively, completely. Then the cheering started. It began with one crew member, then spread across the bridge, aliens from multiple species celebrating together. They had faced a Ravager fleet that should have destroyed them or forced them to retreat. Instead, they had annihilated the enemy. 2 capital ships destroyed, multiple escorts destroyed, the rest scattered and running. And the Council battle group had only lost 1 destroyer with light, damage to 2 others. Captain Zekmorn turned to Laura. He brought one of his upper appendages to his chest in what his species considered a salute. "Commander Bennett, you were correct. Your tactics work. You've given us something we had lost. You've given us the ability to fight back." Laura returned the salute. "You did the fighting, Captain. I just showed you how. Your crew executed those maneuvers perfectly. You trusted the training and it paid off." "Report coming in from the other battle groups," the communications officer announced. "Battle Group 7 under Captain Nicole Grant. Report successful engagement with Ravager forces. Enemy destroyed with minimal friendly casualties." Battle Group 3 under Captain Richard Cole reports similar results. They're requesting more human tactical advisors. The news spread across the bridge. It wasn't just the Stellar Pride. Across multiple systems, Council forces with human advisors were winning battles. The Ravagers were being pushed back for the first time since the war began. Zekmorn looked at the tactical display showing the debris field where the Ravager ships had been. 6 weeks ago, this same fleet would have destroyed us. We would have scattered, taken heavy losses, retreated in disorder. Now we've destroyed them completely. The difference is remarkable. The difference is training and doctrine, Laura replied. Your technology was always better than theirs. Your ships were always capable of winning. You just didn't know how to use them effectively in combat. Now you do. Over the next few hours, reports continued to come in from across Council space. Human combat advisors had been embedded with dozens of fleet battle groups. Ground combat instructors were training security forces on multiple worlds. The results were dramatic. Council forces weren't just holding the line anymore. They were advancing, pushing back, taking territory the Ravagers had captured. Laura received a transmission from Admiral Morrison back on Earth. His image appeared on a small display screen. Good work, Commander. I'm seeing the battle reports. The Council Admiralty is impressed. They're requesting we expand the advisory program. They want human instructors with every major fleet group and garrison. We can do that, sir, Laura confirmed. The crews are learning fast. Once they see the tactics work, they embrace them completely. A few more months and they won't need us anymore. They'll be able to train their own forces. Morrison nodded. That's always been the goal. We're not here to take over. We're here to teach. Once they remember how to fight, they can handle it themselves. He paused. How are you holding up? Laura considered the question. 6 weeks of constant work, teaching, training. Sometimes arguing with stubborn officers who didn't want to listen to a human. Drilling crews until they could execute formations in their sleep. It had been exhausting. I'm fine, sir. This is what I trained for. Good. Because the council is requesting you specifically for another assignment. They want you to help reorganize their military academy system. Teach the next generation of officers. Long-term position, probably several years. Laura thought about it. She had joined the military to protect Earth, to defend humanity's colonies. She had never expected to be teaching aliens how to wage war. But if it helped protect billions of innocent people from the Ravagers, it was worth doing. I'll do it, sir. I thought you might say that, Morrison said with a slight smile. Your promotion to Major will be official next week. Congratulations. The transmission ended. Laura stood on the bridge of the Stellar Pride, surrounded by alien crew members who were still celebrating their victory. She thought about that council meeting 6 weeks ago, when they had shown her videos of Ravager attacks trying to intimidate her. When she had yawned because she had seen it all before in human history, they had learned, they had adapted, and now they were winning. Captain Zek Morn approached her again. Commander, I want to thank you, not just for the tactics and training, but for believing we could do this. When you yawned during that council meeting, many of us were offended. We thought you were disrespecting our losses. But now I understand. You weren't bored. You were remembering. You had seen this kind of war before and survived it. You knew we could survive it too. Laura nodded. Your species and all the others in the council are not warriors by nature. You built a civilization based on peace and cooperation. That's admirable. That's something humans struggled to achieve for thousands of years. But when someone threatens that peace, you have to be willing to defend it. That doesn't make you savages. It makes you survivors. She looked at the tactical display one more time. The debris from the destroyed Ravager ships was already dispersing. Soon there would be nothing left but empty space. The Ravagers made a mistake. They thought the council was weak because you had lived in peace for so long. They thought they could destroy you easily. But peace doesn't mean weakness. It just means you chose not to fight. When you choose to fight when you remember how, you're just as capable as any other species. Zekmorn's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. We had forgotten our warrior past. Our ancestors fought wars long ago before joining the council. We thought we had evolved beyond such things. The Ravagers reminded us that evolution doesn't make you immune to violence. It just makes you unprepared for it. And now you're prepared, Laura said. You've remembered. You've adapted. And you're winning. Over the following months, the war against the Ravagers began to turn decisively in the Council's favor. Human advisors helped reorganize fleet formations, establish better supply lines, and implement effective ground combat tactics. Council forces that had been retreating for months started advancing. Colonies that had fallen were recaptured. The Ravagers found themselves facing an enemy that fought with the same intensity they had used to conquer. Laura eventually left the Stellar Pride to take up her new position at the Council's military academy. She spent the next 3 years teaching alien officers human military doctrine. The courses covered everything from basic tactics to strategic planning. Students learned about Earth's military history, studied famous battles, analyzed what worked and what didn't. The most popular course was one Laura taught herself called Total War Doctrine. It covered how to fight when survival is at stake, how to mobilize entire populations for defense, how to turn industrial capacity toward military production, how to maintain morale during long campaigns. It was everything humanity had learned through thousands of years of warfare, distilled into lessons that could save lives. Some students found the course disturbing. The concept of total war, where entire civilizations focused every resource on victory, was foreign to species that had lived in peace. But they learned. They understood that when facing an existential threat, half measures don't work. By the end of the 3rd year,